Okay, it's 1 o'clock, so we will begin the Fargo Tax-Exempt Review Committee meeting for today. Thank you all for coming, and Jackie is joining us online, so thank you for joining us. We'll start with agenda item number 1, approve Tax-Exempt Review Committee minute meetings of 6/23/2020. And so if you haven't had a chance to look over them, we can do that quickly. And if there's any changes or corrections, otherwise we will accept a motion.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 2, application for a pilot for PRX performance. Jim, will you start us out, please?
Thank you. This application was on your agenda last time, and you had recommended approval. It's nice to see businesses expand, and it's really great when they expand before they open. But they, instead of building 140,000 square feet, they're now looking at 170,000 square feet with some additional jobs as they would include manufacturing. So I'll just ask the business representatives to come forward to talk about the business, what's been added. And then after that, Ryan Oshheim from the EDC has a report on what the secondary benefits for something like this would be, given there's a significant number of jobs. So, Ryan?
And if you wouldn't mind, when you come up, just give your name and kind of a brief summary of what your business is too, if you don't mind doing that. Thank you.
You bet. Brian Brosh, CEO and founder of PRX Performance. PRX Performance manufactures, distributes space-saving weight equipment, which right now is probably one of the most sought-after products in the world, next to toilet paper. We've been around for 7 years, and it's been a fun ride from Shark Tank to obviously standing before you today. So when Commissioner Pipcorn said last time, hopefully see you guys soon, we didn't think it would be this soon, but because of the incentives you gave us at the last meetings, we re-ran the numbers, and we heard of another manufacturing facility that's shutting down at the end of September. We reached out to their general manager and said, would you be interested in running manufacturing business for PRX? Currently, we outsource some local and some international. So we met with the owner, and he said, I have a team that has capabilities from laser cutters to, tube lasers, to robotic welding, to brake press, I mean, you name it, turnkey manufacturing and powder coating. So we've spent the last month diving in and found that this team is going to be laid off. We've hired the general manager already, made an offer, he's accepted, and he's ready to bring on 10 of his key employees that have a very high average salary. Now, you may be wondering, what are we're going to bring them on October 1st if we extend the offers. You may be wondering what they'll be doing for a year while we're building the building. They'll probably be the highest paid warehouse workers in Fargo, but to find a core group that knows how to work together, that knows how to run the equipment, I can guarantee they're going to hit the ground running as soon as the equipment is installed, and it'll essentially be a turnkey solution. So we feel really blessed that this fell into our lap. So running these numbers will allow us to produce, handle our scheduled growth, and continue to bring more jobs into Fargo. We also just finished a RISE survey with North Dakota Trade Association, and we're currently looking at 6 different countries we'll look to export our products to. So it's not just impacting the United States, it's also a global focus of the impact that this new opportunity would have to Fargo. Ryan, do you want to add your information as well?
Ryan Oshheim with the Greater Fargo-Moorhead Economic Development Corporation. So we did some work with a local economic research analyst, Dean Bankson, out of NDSU. So we've done some similar analysis on previous projects. Aldebaran is one example from last year. So as if it's not enough of an impact and the merits that PRX stands on its own and all of the impact that they're going to create, We thought it'd be worthwhile to come in and kind of share with you some of the secondary impacts, as Jim Gilmore mentioned earlier, of the work they're going to do and the expansion and the indirect impacts that's going to bring to the market. So I just have a few numbers to share with you on that. We got Dean put to work pretty quickly last week, and based on the numbers that we know from this project, we were able to come up with this analysis. So Dean uses a recognized economic modeling tool called InPlan. It's a nationally recognized system to generate these numbers. So out of the 99 jobs created by PRX will result in 57 indirect and induced jobs. So really, when we talk about 99 jobs, the impact, the ripple effect of that is 156 jobs through those 57 indirect and induced jobs. And compensation of those indirect and induced jobs totals approximately $2.6 million. So that's an additional $2.6 million in payroll that is being stimulated by the growth of PRX. Increase in indirect, direct, and induced annual sales generated for our region is approximately 17.9 million, 9.1 million of that being direct from PRX and 8.8 million from those indirect and induced activities. So that's the operation of the company's one side of it. Then we have the construction, which is obviously more of a one-time impact, but bringing on 100 construction workers. During that phase of building a 170,000 square foot building, you can imagine it's a pretty significant impact. So during the construction phase, we're conservatively figuring 87.5 construction jobs, and those would support 67 indirect and induced jobs in other sectors across our economy. So think, restaurants, healthcare, et cetera. Construction activities and capital expenditures will have a direct impact of 14.2 million and support 7.7 million in indirect and induced sales in other sectors. And then finally, there's the tax impacts to the city of Fargo, which is, I think, another very important calculus to be focusing on. So one-time construction activities amount to $55,000 in new tax revenue to the city of Fargo. So think, sales tax, property tax from employees and purchasing of homes. Excluding direct property tax paid by PRX, because we take that out because those are being issued as exemption under this model. Operations of PRX project amount to $36,500 each year. After 10 years of operating at full capacity, so we do a calculation on that, the project will have generated nearly $600,000 in tax revenues to the city. The project is expected to be operational during 2022 and reach full capacity at 2026. So that 10-year period is from 2026 to 2035 that we're looking at. So just some additional numbers that we think provides an additional depth for what's already a really strong and solid project.
Thank you very much. Can I ask you, so in the past, you imported some of your, and will this allow you to basically produce your own product and not have to import as much? Can you talk a little bit about that? I know you did a little bit.
So right now we import about 40% of our product that we sell. There are certain economic factors that would be difficult to eliminate all of that. And some things, kettlebells and weight plates and things that you just can't buy in the United States, so make up a portion of that. We're seeing right now that what we're about to build is only going to handle our next year's growth. So we actually, again, we probably won't see you next month, but I hope we see in the next year that this piece handles next year's growth. And we actually, before we hadn't committed to land, after last meetings, we did commit to land. And not only are we starting with 15 acres, only building on half of it, we have another exclusive to further acres to the north. So we could grow even substantially larger and bring more manufacturing in. So it'll give us a few years and we'll continue to erode away at that.
We won't complain about you coming to every meeting if you want to, so don't worry about hurting our feelings there. Jim, can you talk a little bit about what this changes compared to the last meeting and just kind of review what the numbers were there and what's going on now, if you don't mind? And especially, I guess, on page 6, there's the red numbers, and then on page 10, where the summary of the evaluation calculator. Just if you could talk about those real quick for us, I'd appreciate it.
The red numbers are essentially the recommendation. I think the application last time was more around a payment of about $10,000 in the first year. And so it's up from, instead of 140,000 square feet, probably up 15% when they go to 170. The red numbers are what they would pay on the building improvements. The land, they would pay years 1 through 10. So when they had put together the initial application, the black, that had the land in there, and we just corrected that. And so while the payments are a little less, actually they'll be much closer to those numbers in black because they'll pay on the land, whatever that might be. With a pilot, you cannot exempt the value of the land or the property taxes on the land. So in years 1 through 5, there would be no payment on the buildings, and then it would gradually increase up to year 10, and then in year 11 would be the full amount of roughly $140,000 in property taxes. So that's the recommendation. The scoring system, generally this is sort of a guide. We like them to be over 100 points. There's 23 new jobs, that first year. One thing I think I'd like to work with EDC on is to kind of do an update on our scoring system and maybe look at the jobs over the first 2 years, and then how the weighted average works. I think doesn't probably properly take into account some of the businesses that have fairly high paying jobs. And I think people should get a little bit more points for that. So I'd like to work with that on EDC and just let you know, we'll bring some recommendations back on that. So hope that answered your questions.
So the question about the total number of jobs created, so is that is that for the first year, or is that over the first 5 years, or how?
That's just the first year. The number of jobs, if we go to page 3 shows the jobs, currently 50, then going to 73, then 96, 117, 138, and up to 149. So overall, there'd be 99 jobs added over a 5-year period.
Okay, any other questions by any other members of the group?
Will we be getting a copy of that additional data? That wasn't in our packet, was it?
I was going to
The supportive.
happy to submit that.
Yeah, we'll get that emailed out to you, and I'll put that in the minutes.
It was just interesting, so I'd like to see.
And if that would be possible, that's a great point. And when this goes to the city commission, if you could be here and to have that included, we'd appreciate that. I think that would be a good thing to add.
Okay, we'll do that.
Any other comments or questions?
Show that video they showed, Dave?
Well, we can request that again, because I don't think we showed that at the city commission. So maybe that'll be a special request as well, the video from Shark Tank, if you don't mind doing that.
Dude,
And I believe you're ice fishing on Lake Melissa too, so
Yep.
that's a little extra bonus. So you don't charge extra for that, correct?
Sounds good. We'll bring that to the next one. Absolutely.
Okay, if there's, Jackie, you're online. I don't know if you have any questions, and I hate to single you out, but other than that, if there aren't any other comments or questions, we will accept a motion.
I would move to approve the application.
And do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other further comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 3, we are going to continue. Jim, if you want to just talk real quickly about that. We had a family health issue, and so we're just going to continue that to our next
Yeah,
meeting.
unfortunately, the representative had a close family member pass away unexpectedly, and so they'll be here next month.
So we'll just continue that. Do we need a motion for that, Jim, or is that something that we?
We'll just put it back on the agenda. We
Okay.
don't need a motion.
Very good. So we'll move on to number 4, a new industry application by Access Point Technologies, EP Incorporated. And this is an update. And so go ahead, Jim, if you can help us with that.
Yeah, their planned location wasn't working out. We know they were looking at some other locations. I don't know if anyone's called in from Access Point. Is anyone online?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, this is Sean Carroll. I'm the company president.
Sean, maybe you just go ahead and tell us a little bit about the business and if you have any report on other locations that you're looking at in Fargo.
Yeah, sure. So I can share a little bit about the business, if that's okay. We're a medical device manufacturing company that is located in Rogers, Minnesota, in an 18,000 square foot facility that's FDA approved and CE mark registered. The business started in 2003, but is under current management since 2015. Can you see the presentation that I've got up, or not?
Not yet. We see a black screen that says audio and presentation mode, but we don't see anything yet.
All right, let's try again. How's that?
There we go. Yes, we are good.
All right, there we go. We have the technology. All right. So we're a global supplier of innovative medical device products focused on the electrophysiology field. The electrophysiology market globally is about a $5 billion market, and it grows at about a 13% CAGR year over year. It's a very fast-growing, large market that has a lot of specialty devices. We make a portfolio of diagnostic and therapeutic catheters that service that market, and we've been selling in Europe since 2015 and in the U.S. since 2017. We're a recognized leader in some of the small French diagnostic catheters, and we use updated and current manufacturing methodologies to give our clinicians devices that they really enjoy using. And so even though we're a small player in the overall field, we do pretty well for ourselves in certain subsets, and we select those subsets very carefully as far as new product development goes. We really focus on innovation, understanding our customers' unmet needs, and then using technology and innovation to bring them devices that satisfy those unmet needs. Highly collaborative with these key opinion leaders throughout the world. I've got about 30 years of experience in this field. My business partner has about 35 years of experience in this field, and we both have a network of doctors globally that we depend on for their advice and unmet needs. And because we share the ownership with the company with all of our employees, we all think and act as owners, and that's an important thing for us as far as sharing the business outcomes. So as you can see from the slide here, we make catheters for this market, and we are getting into the manufacturing of systems, and that's why we're doing some development work on a next generation cryoablation system. So the work that would be done in the North Dakota facility would be focused on the electromechanical control system for this cryo system. And while we're not starting off in a building that we're going to build or a land that we're going to own, we're going to start a little smaller than the previous applicant. We'll bring some technology and economic diversification to the area that I think is interesting and should be exciting for people to get involved with. We have a lot of background in the development of these systems. One of the systems that I developed and sold to Medtronic in the year 2005 is now doing about 150,000 procedures per year, which nets Medtronic about $800 million a year. So these systems can be, grown from a small team to being a very large, impactful medical device treatment, and that's what we're all about is bringing these things to the market. So we'll start by leasing a facility there. As was mentioned earlier, we started out with a facility in the Prax building, but that lease didn't get signed. So we're looking at other spaces. My business partner actually is up there today looking at spaces with the realtor. So we're looking at 4 other spaces in the greater Fargo area. We will build this electromechanical control system, which includes software, hardware, plumbing, and quality engineering, obviously, into the cryobiology systems. And we'll bring the medical device industry expertise that is necessary for the development and testing of this system. both through our own leadership and through the, bringing in consultants from outside. And we will develop, as part of this project, significant intellectual property, which we are confident will lead to other applications outside of the cardiovascular market, including pain management, tumor ablation, neurologic applications for the cryo, coronary and peripheral disease treatments using this cryo system. So this is a sort of we think of this as a seed development, if you will, for a cryo system capability. And we're starting out with a fairly small footprint, as you can see from the application, but anticipate growing that into a larger business over the course of a few years. The medical device business is a very capital intensive business, and unlike other businesses where you can kind of pour gas on the fire to grow them after the fact, the sales don't start until you've got your regulatory approval, and even then you have to get market purchase and traction in order to drive the sales. So it's a very capital intensive upfront, and then obviously the benefits come on the back end when you're able to do the clinical treatment and expand the market. So any questions about what we're planning to do or kind of how we're going about it?
And I'll just jump in real quick and say on page 23, it's a primary sector company. I think that's important for our committee to know. And then maybe, Jim, you can talk a little bit. The thing that jumps out at me is that it's 4 jobs, but they're all over $35 an hour. And so, and maybe this is another topic, but just the score overall isn't as high as it possibly could be because of our scoring methods. But other than that, it's very impressive. And some of the topics, obviously, we should defer to our mayor. He's the medical expert here and not us, but it's very interesting. And so if you don't mind, Jim, just give us some of the summary of the numbers.
Yeah, as I looked at our scoring system, I was thinking this one would score higher. If you look at the points per jobs for dollar, they're just 10 points, but really all the jobs are over $35 an hour. And when you look at our scoring system, you'd have many more points. So Ben Hushka in his spreadsheet uses some sort of weighted average that we admittedly don't fully understand how he set up those formulas. Another reason we want to take a look at the scoring system. But the scoring system for us has always been a guide. And so when you just look at the other jobs, the first year it's 4, but then it goes to 8, 10, 12, 14, and these jobs are all over $35 an hour. I'm not sure what the upper range on these is, because our highest range is over 35. Probably the other thing to point out is that the value of the space that they would likely lease is $417,000 in value. So the tax savings is roughly $5,700 a year. So over 5 years, this is going to be an exemption that would only cost the city, less than $30,000 for some very high-paying jobs in a company that's got tremendous potential for growth. And so it seemed like a good application. I know the EDC supports it. So I don't know what your pleasure is today. You could recommend approval provided that they find a location in Fargo of this size, or you could hold this over until you know exactly where the building would be.
I think from the perspective, well, I guess anybody else on the committee, I'd love to hear from you, but from our perspective, it's like you're talking about the concept of this medical technology is a great thing, but before it gets to city commission, you have to know where the land is. I think that's a pretty important thing. So that's...
Yeah, when we got to city commission, we'd have to actually advertise the site. But if they sign a lease tomorrow, we could start getting the ads in right away. We don't know exactly where that might be. There's only this isn't your average office space. They need a certain amount of clean where you make these. You just can't do it anywhere. It has to be a certain facility. And Ryan, I don't know if you want to touch on it.
And while he's coming up, Mayor, go ahead.
Jim, what would change the point system? Say they find something in Fargo, is there anything that would change that point system? Or do we need to talk to our assessors and figure is there a different way of doing that? Because it's high-paying jobs, not a lot of people, because that's what makes it. It's great technology. So is there a way that would change? Because I think the 100 points is going to be the critical part of this application.
Yeah. Well, you know, when you look at the number of points they got, I brought our, maybe you could put this up on the screen. So you look at how that spreadsheet worked is, it said, you know, there were 4 jobs and there were 10 points for the, you know, based on that dollar per hour. But when you look at the scoring system, if you're over $35 an hour, you should be getting 50 points. And so I don't know if there was an error in the spreadsheet that's been used for all these years, or if there's a weighted average that Ben was using. But if I'm filling out the application, I'm looking at this scoring system. I don't know if we can zoom in on, you know, this part here.
Yeah, we can see it, and I think, anyway, that's something that we need to review, because that doesn't seem like it's translating quite right.
Yeah, so anyway, I think I was surprised that both this and the AdShark one didn't get over 100, because they're both have fairly high-paying jobs, and I think should have got more points when you look at this criteria. So I think we need to take a look at how that formula works, as well as maybe looking at the number of jobs over 2 years, because when someone gets the incentive, they actually sign an agreement that says that they'll create the jobs over the first 2 years. That's what we kind of review them on, and so it seems like they should get points for the first 2 years versus the first 1 year, or at least incorporate that into the scoring system.
Yeah, and I just wanted to comment too, I did visit with the assessor about this briefly this morning. The weighted average calculation evidently has been in the system for many years. It just has not jumped out at us, so to speak. And so I kind of agree a little bit with Jim with regard to the job creation. The first year is maybe a tough year in certain circumstances and others maybe not, but it makes sense to me to expand that a little bit in a scoring system. But I just didn't want for Jim to leave the impression that we did something wrong or that there was an error in the job tabulation or the evaluation.
Yeah, Ken's right, we've been using this system, it's just, we haven't taken a real close look at, when we did all the review of our policy, we didn't really look at this scoring system that closely, and so I think it's something to think about, well, what's most important as we score these, and so also we've always just kind of used this as a guide, so if someone got close to 100, often it was a good project, they would get the approval anyway.
Go ahead, Ken.
You know, and the other thing that's important to look at is the general evaluation criteria in the early part of our policy. It's multifaceted. There's many different facets for which we would evaluate it, and then we try to boil it into one succinct little spreadsheet. It seems like you need to take a broader view of what is coming our way and evaluate it based upon its merits.
Well, the other thing is, you're always looking to improve things, and so back in the day, we did this so we'd have more of an objective view instead of just subjective. So that was, I don't know if you remember when we worked on this, but it took us a long time, and as time goes by, then you learn things that you need to improve, so that's good. Go ahead.
Yeah, so just to kind of build off what Jim was saying, so APT does require some specialized space, wet lab space, electric lab space. So the Prax building was a really good fit for them. They kind of understood what renovation was going to be required to get them up and running. They had a target date of September 1st was really when they were hoping to get in there and start developing the space. So as they look at new space, and as you heard Sean say, there's, I think, 3 or 4 spaces that they're looking at that kind of fit that initial criteria. They're going to have to determine what kind of renovation is required of that new space. It might be less, it might be more, and might have additional costs associated with it. So in kind of trying to maintain the timeline that they're working with, I think anything we can do, understanding, of course, that we can't obviously be approving incentives if we don't know what space they're going to be in. But we're working with them on hiring some of those first hires that are electrician background, electrical engineers, and I think it's also important to note too that and I don't know if it was pointed out that their presence here is kind of a foundational. So they're looking at the research and development, and obviously there's qualifications and certifications that they need from FDA and other agencies. And once they have that, kind of opens up the market opportunity for them. And then they're looking at kind of the next stage, which is manufacturing, which they would also look to do here. So I think the growth of this company is kind of, this is a foundational aspect of that. And I think, the hope is that with anything, you have companies like Aldebaran, which, grown to be these significant global presence. And I think also too, this company, represents what could be, kind of the start of a focus on medical device technologies too. So I think this company has the potential to attract some other interest in that area too.
I think with the tight timeline, if you're comfortable, it would be good to get a recommendation to approve this project for the 5-year property tax exemption. Again, it's just the 5 year, and it generally fits with our policy. And then hopefully they can pin down a location in the next week, and we can advertise that and push it on to City Commission as soon as possible.
Kent, when I just look at this thing that Jim put up on value of employees, it's in the 35 range is 35 points, and we only gave them 10. If we'd given 35 points versus 10, they'd score 105. So why would that not happen?
Yeah, there's been a weighted system that's been used, and it's in an Excel spreadsheet, and the formula is quite long and complicated. I haven't had a chance to sit down and try to figure it out. But rather than do that, I thought we should just update the scoring system, work with EDC, and kind of try to tailor it to the type.
I think, Jim, it'll be hard to get through the commission if it isn't closer to 100. So I'm wondering, and then, maybe the company can be a little bit more optimistic how they'll grow. We can dream. We have one company here that keeps growing every day. So, that's one option that happens, but maybe you can be a little bit more optimistic. Catheter companies are going crazy. Ablation procedures are increasing all over the world, and you would kind of wonder, with what you're describing, this thing could take off in 2 to 3 years.
If you want to simply, recommend the policy be changed and we just use this number rather than the weighted average, that would get them over 100. That's how I interpreted it when I first scored it, and then.
I just wonder about that.
I wonder, Mike, if you could come up and address the committee.
And I have to apologize because Kent asked me to introduce you. So Kent, at this time, will you introduce?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to announce that Mike Splonskowski is our new city assessor. He replaces Ben Hushka, who you guys have all come to know, and you'll certainly like working with Mike. We recruited him last month and have appointed him just about 2 meetings ago. So we're happy to have Mike on board. He's been with the city assessor's office about 8 years and has past experience with Otter Tail County and is doing commercial and has good background experience. So, and again, just for the record too, I oversee the finance department that includes finance and the assessing, and we started a transition plan for this office 2 to 3 years ago, beefing up protocols, documenting procedures, and grooming staff. So we're really pleased that Mike applied, and we're even more pleased that the City Commission approved him. So welcome him today. But anyway, Mike, I wondered if you could talk briefly about this weighted average component. It seems to me it's tied also to the number of jobs in a weighting factor. If you could cover that briefly.
Yes, thank you. So this is basically the spreadsheet that was put together for this process. And I'm going to, right here, you'll see the weighted average. And what it did was up in this area, you had the points for the jobs. And this is all in the manual itself as well. And that's going to take the points off of this right here. That's exactly from what the manual says. And then the points for the dollar jobs, what it's doing is it's taking the salary points, so you guys are looking at this $30, 30 points for the $20 or, you know, whatever it ends up being for this, and it's using the weight of the numbers of jobs. So it's 20% for that first classifications from 0 to 10 jobs, and then 40% for the next 11 to 15, and 60%. This is how it's doing that calculation. So you can see where you have that number of jobs that's below 10, it's really only taking that 20% of the 30 points. So that's where that 6 points, you know, for the dollar jobs is coming from. So this is the way it's been set up, and so that's why it looks a little bit funny from excuse me, the amount that has been set in the policy manual itself.
Any further comments, but I do think it's something that we need to look at, and there might be other things in there too that as time's gone by, we maybe need to refine a little bit more. I will say math, I was not aware that we were gonna have math involved with the meeting today, so that's why we have our experts here, but Bruce, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is it possible, since we don't know a location as of today, and we are the review committee, and a revisit of, I tend to agree with the mayor, with an 80-pointer is hard for us to be credibly sending on to the commission. Is it possible to continue this to August, so at least we could have a location and ensure it's going in Fargo?
The only concern is we want to make sure that we're flexible with them, and I think they want to be able to start as soon as possible. That's the challenge, and I agree that you don't want to approve something that you still don't know for sure. So it's the other option would be we could have an interim meeting, and so that's the other option that we should maybe think about. So I guess I would lean that way, especially if it's a short meeting and we can join online or by telephone. I think. I'm getting lots of nods of heads, so I think if that's okay, why don't we look at that? Because I do think it's a great business, and we want to encourage them. And then again, if they want to meet in another month and they need to expand, I think we need to be flexible. So is that possible, Jim?
I think we can be flexible on meeting as long as it works with your schedule. That might work well with Ad Shark that couldn't be here today. If there's a special meeting, they'd be able to get in on that also.
Okay, so, and I don't think we'll need to take action then on that, but we'll just basically do the same thing. We'll continue this, and then we'll do our best to notify everybody as soon as possible, and then I think we should have it be an online participation and then you can be in person if you want to, but let's do it that way, if that's all right with everyone?
Yep.
Okay, and so, and I apologize to Kent for the introduction. I'm not the smartest guy in the room, so you get welcomed and then you get put on the spot right away. Unfortunately, that's life in the big city. Okay, number 5, report from the Greater Fargo-Moorhead EDC on economic activities and the Growth Initiative Fund. Joe, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and this is a good day to come in. Lots of good discussion around core economic development for the region. I just want to say at the start that I think the discussion that you just had is extremely important to look at how you establish kind of the ground rules and the framework for making decisions that not only are made here but go up to the commission. Having spent now about 28 years in 5 different markets in 3 different states, I can tell you this is done a lot of different ways. But I think it's important that there is criteria and that it's reviewed and updated in a manner that's consistent with what's happening in the community. So as Jim mentioned, our team is ready to be of any kind of assistance that we can around the thinking on establishing or maybe reestablishing the point scale and how you look at this. The last thing I'll say on that is that in the markets that I've worked in historically, 2-3 years tends to be a good time horizon because if you're looking at new construction or renovation, especially wet lab space, that could take half of a year, and in some cases, and then you really shorten the time frame for that job creation. So I wanted just to take some time with you this afternoon. I think I've given an update to the full commission and this committee in the past, And there's been a lot of things happening with the organization and our relationship with the city. And so just wanted to take an opportunity to do a quick update for all of you. I think the takeaways from our brief discussion are 4 in my mind. The first is, and this sounds maybe a little bit simplistic, but how an economy works. I've been, like I said, doing this for 27 years, and one thing I've learned is you never make an assumption, even with very bright and seasoned people in the work that they do, to understand just that basic concept. And this might be more for the audience listening, the citizenry, and then those of you sitting up in the chair, but I think it's important because you're making those decisions on investments. And then I want to just spend a few minutes talking about something that I've been asked quite a bit in the 2 years that I've been here in the market, and that is, well, what's the difference between and how do you guys work with groups like the Chamber and Emerging Prairie and United Way and others? Because I think it's really important. These structures can be handled a lot of different ways in communities, but what's most important is that there's alignment and that core work's being done and how we play a role in that. And then third, the Growth Initiative Fund. This is a fund that both the city of Fargo, West Fargo, and Cass County helped put together over 20-some years ago. We manage that fund, which many of you know, and I just want to give you a quick overview of some of the results of that work. And then lastly, and maybe as important as anything, is what is the impact to you within the city of Fargo of the investment that you're making in the EDC and our work. I've had the pleasure of providing a similar update just last week to Cass County. So Robert, if you want to stand up here and we'll tag team this one, that's great. And also next week with West Fargo's leadership. So there are really only 4 inputs to any regional economy, pretty much anywhere in the world. And those 4 first are, let's just call them transfer payments. When the state sends money to the local or the feds send money locally, dollars come from outside into this local economy. We've seen that obviously recently with the CARES Act funding at the federal level, and then how the state of North Dakota is divvying up some of those monies down to the city and the county levels. And obviously that happens every year, maybe at a different volume than what we're seeing right now. I think the question that people tend to ask themselves is, does that go on forever? And with a $20 trillion federal deficit and others, do we want to depend on that to be a source of our funding forever and ever? Most people would say it's helpful, but it's probably not where we need to look at all times. The second is tourism, people making decisions to come into our regional economy and stay here. I think what Charlie Johnson would call heads in beds, and the different events that are going on. Right now we're seeing about a 50% reduction, as we know, in tourism because of COVID. And how that turns around in the time frame of that, none of us really know, but it's an important part of any economy. Third, and especially for this market, is higher education money, whether that's federal loans or individual families paying for students to come into the marketplace. I don't know if you're all aware of this, but the projections are in about 2025, we're going to see a major cliff in terms of high school graduates in the upper Midwest, and actually it's being felt nationally. So there's going to be a lot more competition for our higher education institutions to bring what is their number one clientele, that 18-year-old, into the marketplace. And then lastly is really why we exist as an EDC. Believe it or not, next year this organization will be 75 years old. It's been under different names, but it's operated since 1946 with this sole mission. This mission has never changed, and that is supporting the PRXs, supporting the access points, the Microsofts, the companies of all different sizes. But the key distinction, again, is that they don't need to be here to serve their client, because their clients aren't here. Their clients are national and global. So it's really important that we stay focused on this part of where money comes from. And I'm not saying this because this is my job. I would say this whether it was or not in any market around the world. It's how you help those new companies, how you help those existing ones expand, and how you attract new ones into the market. And I think we've saw 2 examples of those 3 just here in the last 30 minutes of our discussion. So how do we do this? And I know this is a busy sheet here, but if you take a look at that top third, that just really describes why we exist as the EDC. We're focused on primary sector. It's what we breathe and eat every day, but we can't do that alone. There's some key partnerships that we need, and some key partnerships that you obviously are involved in from a city perspective. If you look on the left-hand side, there's always public policy issues that are dealt with at state levels or national levels, and sometimes even locally. But throughout the Red River Valley, for the last 7 years, the EDC has been one of the dual leads, along with the Grand Forks EDC, in helping to manage what we call the Valley Prosperity Partnership. So when you think about things like water supply, that never comes to anybody's mind, right? Or water diversion. It's on all of our minds quite a bit. When you think of workforce development, that's a regional issue. When you think of our research institutions and the funding to support research, these are all primary targeted focuses of the Valley Prosperity Partnership, or what we call the VPP. And we're part of that because it helps to serve our mission to support primary sector companies. Just last May, and you're all very familiar with the Fueling Our Future initiative because the city is one of the significant partners in that. That was led initially by the chamber, and then we came on board as the EDC as the co-partner in launching that in May of last year. And there's a lot of different initiatives that are underway that Fueling is involving themselves in, whether it's the Career Workforce Academies, or how we engage and keep college students in the region, or how we build regional certified sites for companies to come and locate on. This is all handled under what we call our Fueling umbrella, and that's part of our partnership. And then the last major partnership is Emerging Prairie, which again is not unfamiliar to anybody here, but this is something that the EDC has supported from day one and continues to support and partner with. And through John and Ryan's efforts and the efforts of Emerging Prairie staff, we're strengthening that even more to get even more honed in on what Emerging Prairie is doing in their relationships with primary sector companies that they can work with us on and allow us to do the work that we do to help those businesses grow here. So those are the three major partners that we have strategic plans and are meeting with frequently in relationship with to do our mission. And then there are a number of others that we do programmatic partnerships with, whether it's United Way or the HBA or the Tri-College Initiative with our area higher education institutions. So I just wanted everybody to understand in a very, all markets are complex in terms of their business relationships and engagement between the public and private sector. And sometimes it's hard to understand that. This essentially two-pager, we believe, helps explain what we do and why we do it and the partners we need to have working and aligning with us to make that successful. Now, I want to just spend a second to talk about the Growth Initiative Fund. This was formed back in the early mid-90s. At that time, the cities and the county agreed that they would partner to put about $8 million into a loan fund that could partner up with the Bank of North Dakota's grant programs. And you can see here in 2019, by the way, we distributed a packet of information specific to the city of Fargo about 2 months ago. And that should have been available to all of the commissioners and anybody who wanted to take a look at it. This is in totality the activity in 2019. I know you all see John Mahacek at all of the 1 Million Cup events and the TEDx events and connecting people. Believe it or not, John probably spends more than 50% of his time right here on this program, helping these primary sector companies access this local fund, which we manage on behalf of you, West Fargo, and Cass County. We do that at an unbelievable rate of 0%. We had a bad negotiator at that time 20-some years ago, but we're happy to do so. And you can see the impacts just in 2019 on jobs, capital investment, how much project capital companies are putting in, and the grant funding that we're getting from the Bank of North Dakota to make those happen. Over its history, you can see 237 different projects have been supported. And any banker listening to this or in the room would be really happy to know that we have a loan loss rate, I think, of 1%, maybe 2%. So really strong investments in these companies with nearly $500 million, more than $500 million of capital invested over the life of the fund. As somebody who's been doing this quite a while in other markets, I can say this is probably one of the most unique programs I've seen an economic development group have access to and operate. So credit to the leadership over the past 20-some years in the region for having something like this available to our companies to grow. I also want to just give you a very quick update on our dashboard. We keep track of all of our projects and the key metrics to those projects. We report them out, as Mayor Mahoney knows, and Commissioner Pepcorn know, as board members with the EDC. We report these out every quarter to the board and every month to our executive committee. We keep track of projects, jobs, capital investment, and new square footage that's being utilized within the marketplace. Good news is if the arrow's in that orange space in the middle, we're on track with our 3-year goals. And maybe the better news is that we have several projects right now we're working with your staff on and other community leaders within the region. And we're hoping to see announced here over the course of the next couple, 3 months, another 7 projects that if they happen, will exceed all of our major metrics except for just total number of projects, but the big ones that count: jobs, capital investment, new square footage in the marketplace. So we feel really good about where we are going forward, even in and amongst these challenging times. Now, this is a little hard, I know, for folks to read, but this goes right to the comments that were just being made by Ryan when he was talking about the PRX project. Last year, we helped 29 different companies complete projects throughout the region. And the question that's always asked is, well, how does this impact me? What does this do for my business? And so this one page gives an overarching, I would say, explanation of the financial impact to the major sectors of our economy. So for example, if you take a look at construction, about 7, 8 down on the left, those projects either directly or indirectly impacted the construction industry by over $78 million last year alone, okay? So pretty significant. And you can see how this impacts all the other sectors. One caveat, COVID does have an impact on spending, as we know. One advantage, as crazy as it might sound, is that some of those dollars are still in the economy. It's where people are investing them. And I don't know about any of you, but my neighborhood has 8 homes going up and being improved upon, which all go back to the bottom line tax base for the cities and the counties. So even though these numbers may look a little different because of the impacts of COVID, the absolute dollar amounts we believe are pretty close to the same. They're just being invested in different parts of the economy. And as important as it is to see how it impacts the rest of the businesses, one of the reasons you're in the seat you're in is how does this impact the city? This is our job, and we want to make sure that those dollars are getting a return for us. So since 2015, the city of Fargo has invested about $75,000, that doesn't include this year's investment, in the EDC. Now we go back and we look at projects from about 2014-15 to today, and these numbers, as Ryan said, we hire an outside third party, Dean Bangson with NDSU, well-respected applied economist, and he's estimated, including taking out tax exemptions, and especially in this last year with a big project like Aldeveron, it means about $10.2 million of tax revenue to the city of Fargo. This isn't tax revenue for all taxing bodies. This is just to the city of Fargo. So if you took that as kind of a dollar per investment, it's about $136 back to the city of Fargo by these projects that we have the pleasure and honor of getting to assist in the marketplace. And please know that that doesn't include the schools, and that doesn't include the park district. Okay, that's just right back to the revenue that the city commission and the staff are determining how best to utilize. So I'll end with that and take any questions or comments that you all have. I just wanted to make sure people understood how kind of the big picture then gets applied down to the local level.
First, I have a request for you. You know, we were talking about that last application where there was 4 jobs. It's such a micro, that's a difficult one for us. Obviously, the potential is astronomical, but to me, that's to figure out something for us, because I think we want to participate, but it's a unique thing, so it's a challenge. The other thing I wanted to say was how important this is. So the EDC, it's hard for all of us locals to give up our power, I guess I would say, but by Cass County and West Fargo and Fargo, we are all working with you instead of having our own individual ones. I don't know if that makes sense. You know, we're giving up a little bit, and you're part of our team. Otherwise, we would have to have, each one of us entities would have to have that same duplicate. Could you talk a little bit about that, or does that make sense?
Well, yeah, I certainly can. You know, there are no such thing as state economies. And in many respects, there are no such thing in my mind as city economies. It's naturally nested regional economies that guide our globe and the interactions between business and people, right? So your decision to invest in the EDC and Cass counties and Moorhead and others that are in Clay and Cass County has to do with, this is a regional economy. It's an $18, $19 billion regional economy across 2 state lines, right? So if companies are making decisions on where they want to locate, they first want to say, where's the region I want to do my business in, right? Because the workforce I'm going to pull isn't going to be, I just want employees that live in Fargo. They could be living in Castleton. They could be living in Moorhead or someplace else within our labor shed and our region. So our belief is that you structure your organization to serve your mission, and that mission are primary sector companies who they look at the marketplace as a regional transportation system. They look at it as a regional workforce. The good news is, for somebody like me, is that this is such a dynamic market that has many options for people and businesses. Do I want to live in this part of our region versus that part? Minnesota is different than North Dakota, we know that. Fargo is different than West Fargo or Moorhead. So you can pick as an individual and as a company, but stay within that regional marketplace. So I think the fact of the matter is that our allegiance as an organization is to the region. And I was just talking to our team this morning about this issue of how do we measure what we should be doing to partner with a company. And I would propose that as we have that discussion with your team, that we reach out and we talk to Lauren in West Fargo, and we talk to Derek in Moorhead and others and say, is there something we can agree to regionally? Because these companies are we want them to locate here, somewhere in our region, then you all will make the decision on how to support them once that decision's made.
And unfortunately, the human nature is the mayor and I want everything to be in Fargo, but but we're too small of an area to just be parochial. We have to look at this as other people do. They look at this as the whole market and not just our. Go ahead, Mayor.
Nice report, Joe. I was just looking on Brian's company. I'm trying to order one of these weight setups, and I can't get it for 6 weeks because you guys are too busy. But I would like to look at this company that comes in with high-paying jobs, but now I think our model is wrong right now in the sense we're always valuing number workers, and it seems more and more we're getting less workers to do the work. And how can we reward that? So you bring in a company that'll bring research, high-paying jobs, perhaps growth to a national, international company. And is there a way of looking at that? Because we'll never make it. There won't be 500 people working in that job. But you might be taking, our brightest and smartest people go into that field, and just like Medtronic's grew, or just like 3M, all of a sudden that thing grows and grows and grows. And you're making a reputation in your community as high-end research, different things coming out, Devron, all the different things we have going on. So I'm just wondering, is there a model we can look at, Jim, that maybe captures the California model or a different kind of model? Because we continually run into this as even the high-tech warehouses that don't have, everything's automated, so they don't have as many personnel. And DigiKey is a great company, great benefits, great job market for people. That has a lot of people that work in there, but even they are constricted in the numbers that they have. So sometimes, Mike, when you're trying to do the weight, is there a different way of doing the weight? Because I agree with Chris Grubb, is if they don't hit the 100 ratio, we probably are not going to recommend them as a tax-exempt company, basically. So is there a way we could relook at this is there a different way of weighting it if you're bringing in a company that has the potential. I mean, they're going to double their workforce. They're going to go 4 to 8. Well, that doesn't really hit, but they're also on the amount of money that can come into the community. So I'll throw that both of you.
I think, maybe we could work with Joe and his staff on kind of a different scoring system. And I think a business expansion, many of these are small companies that are growing. That's where a lot of the job growth is in small companies, and they're high-paying jobs. And so, rather than giving lots of points because we have a call center that employs 75 people, here we have a tech company that employs 6, and that might be better for us. There's more small company opportunities than big company opportunities, and I think that has changed over the year. And so I'd be happy to work with Joe and your staff in terms of looking at the number of jobs, the capital investment, number of jobs just not in year 1 but year 2, and some points for potential, as well as those wage scales probably need to be updated just a little bit.
And I'd add, Mayor, the good news today is that we have a lot of data available to us on occupations. If you're an employee at a DigiKey and you're making $17, $18 an hour, you can look at what that type of employee makes in the marketplace, and you can say, that's actually a good paying job. Look at the benefits that they offer. If you look at an access point that's in the medical device sector, is it really fair to compare them to a DigiKey in the investment that they're making? I would say it's not. I would say it's probably more fair to say, oh, this is a medical device company. What types of occupations do they have? What kinds of investments are they making? And are they making such an investment in our marketplace that justifies a partnership with the city because of the type of company they are and the investment they're making? 5 jobs paying $35 an hour may be fantastic, or you may find out that those occupations in this market need to pay 42, right?
Yep.
And so I think as we continue to have these discussions, not for me anyway, not just here within the city of Fargo, but within our whole region, we should be able to provide you a little bit more guidance. And the key is it's guidance. It's not an absolute. And I think that's what I hear you're looking for, is just a reassessment of that.
And Joe, in that guidance, when you're doing, can we keep in mind that we want to make sure that we're constantly paralleling that to the strategic plan? Because whatever the city wants to accomplish, that weighted system needs to support that. Otherwise, we're going to end up in the same situation we currently are now. Previously, it was number, just how many bodies can we get, pumping out this system. But if that's changing, that we not only change the policy and look to changing the scoring sheet that reflects what the city's ultimately trying to achieve in those success metrics. And then in the data you were providing, is there a time where the EDC is going back to reconcile the successful projects? They see the number of jobs, the number of projects, but how many of them at the end of the day, year by year, are continually still viable? And then is there something that can be overlaid to say, we're noticing a shift or a niche or something that's working really well, and put together some sort of risk model to say, hey, this one might not do as well based on historical data, but that's where we need to be. Do you have any insights on that maybe could play into that scoring model?
Yeah, I mean, we're building that kind of system. I mentioned the 29 projects that were in this economic impact. We went out and we reached out to the companies and said, is your project still going forward, especially with COVID? Mm-hmm. And the responses back from everybody who responded to us is like, yes, we're still going forward. This might delay 6 months. So going back and tracking that back 5-10 years is kind of challenging for us, but going forward, as we look at the history of projects in the most recent time frame, we definitely are working towards doing so. Sometimes you just can't get that information, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't try to search and ask. The other thing I'd say is we have to be mindful of the times we're in. Right now, the hospitality industry has laid off 4,000 or 5,000 people, right? So if we have a project where we have a company that comes into the market and they're looking to hire hundreds of people, and some of those people could be coming from that hospitality industry that's been laid off, you might want to make a different recommendation to the commission, where if it was 2 years ago, you might have said, hey, we're going to look at this project a little differently. So I think we've got to give you that balance of good hard data and kind of the situation we're in. And it's not going to be perfect, but hopefully it'll be enough for the commission and others making those decisions to be able to speak to the citizenry and say, we did this because of X, not just because.
Yep, definitely.
Yes, I was looking at the, the payroll numbers on Access Point Technologies. The 4 jobs, they're going to average $85,000 a year. That's well over that $35 an hour. And so I think our scoring system needs to take, that kind of wage into account a little bit better than it does today. Also, in terms of the follow-up, I think we're going to kind of look at our system and kind of track, make sure these reports come in so we know what people actually create. And when we've done that before, often we see people created more jobs than they said, and their payroll is greater than they said. And so I think working with the EDC to do some follow-up on these, I think you'd already probably do some of that, but that feedback doesn't always come back to the city.
And a request for a look back, if we, a time period of maybe just this year, that if we've declined or decided not to move forward based on the point system, that didn't deal with, like, they didn't have primary sector. So it was, if it dealt with the point system specifically to jobs, that we go back and just validate, because if we're changing it now, we should make sure that we don't forget them.
And I think in the past, you have recommended projects that fell below the 100 points. When we got to city commission, quite frankly, I don't think they showed them on the score.
Any further discussion? Otherwise, it's 2:06. We've had a very good meeting. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We are adjourned.